Anything that satisfies these four conditions can be termed as living. Classification and identification, these 2 points are interchangeable. The first person ever to make an effort to sort living things into various categories is Aristotle.
Thank you for watching this video.
Hello students, welcome to B2S Academy. Today we will be going to learn about diversity in the living world. Now, to understand the diversity in living world, we need to look into two terms. One is diversity and one is living. So what is living or what are living things? Anything that satisfies the following conditions are called as living. That is, that animal or the plant or any other living thing that we can see, bacteria, microbes, and other things, must fulfill number one, they must be able to move. Number two, they must be able to do respiration. Number three, they must be able to acquire food either by making their own food or by procuring it from another source. Or number four, they must be able to reproduce. Anything that satisfies these four conditions can be termed as living. Now, what is diversity? Diversity is the various variations that we can find amongst all the living things. When we look around, when we look outside our home, we see plants, we see insects, we see humans, we see cats, we see dogs, we see another type of animals such as cows, goats, etc. We see different kinds of birds, we see flowers. All these encompass the living world, and all these various components contribute to the diversity of the living world. There are other things also that we cannot see with the naked eye. Those are the microbes. To see them, we need the aid of microscopes. For example, bacteria. For example, protozoans. Microscopic other organisms such as unicellular algae or unicellular fungi, we cannot see with our naked eyes. We need the aid of microscopes. However, even those microbes have a great variety. Hence, they also contribute and they also form a part of our living world. To understand living world, we first need to classify. We first need to classify the living things on the basis of whether they are prokaryotic or eukaryotic, unicellular or multicellular. They are made up of plant cells or animal cells or some different kind of cells. We need to first sort animals based on their features and also their evolutionary relationship with other animals and their connections or similarities or dissimilarities with other animals, or in case of plants, with evolutionary relationship with some other plants or with the plants of their own kind, the kind of relationship they fulfill. We need to classify that organism based on these criteria. The next thing we need to do is identify. Based on the criteria of classification, we need to identify that whether it is a plant or an animal or another thing like a microbe or something. We need to identify. Next, we need to give a name That is nomenclature. The science of naming organisms based on their similarities or dissimilarities with other organisms, related or unrelated, is called nomenclature. And fourth, we need to categorize them. We need to put them in a category. We need to put them in a group of related animals or similar animals based on the features that we have identified or we have laid down in our classification scheme. This is known as taxonomy. Students, you need to remember that classification and identification, these 2 points are interchangeable. For example, you can first identify it or you can first classify it. Let me illustrate. You are going in a forest or you are wandering in a garden, you come across a bird which you have never seen before. Firstly, when you see a bird, you see that whether or not, for the first case, it is a bird or not. How we know? It has got beaks, it has got feathers, it has got wings, and it can fly or it can move about in a typical fashion. So these all characteristics we lay down in our minds, and then we see whether if we can identify the bird, whether it is known or unknown. So identification and classification go hand in hand and are interchangeable. You can also write identification first and classification second, because when we see an animal, we lay down the criteria first of to identify the animal. So classification and identification go hand in hand or can be used interchangeably. Then nomenclature and taxonomy follows. Nomenclature is naming and then we classify it into different groups. The first person ever to make an effort to sort living things into various categories is Aristotle. Aristotle is known as the father of biology or the father of zoology, that is the study of animals. So, the first thing, let me erase the thing. So, first, Aristotle, he classified all things as living and non-living and all living things into plants and animals. He also divided animals into various groups, that is, one who can lay eggs and one who gives live birth to young ones. Egg laying animals were termed as oviparous, and animals giving live birth, such as humans, were termed as viviparous. He also classified aquatic animals into fishes and whales. Later, another person called Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder. He wrote a book called Historia Plantarum. Historia Plantarum. Now, in Historia Plantarum, he categorized 1,000 varieties or species of plants based on their importance and medicinal values. Next, another person, John Ray. He also wrote a book called Historia generalis plantarum. In this book, he classified 18,000 plant species based on their various economic and medicinal importance, and he also used the term species. Species. Now, what is a species? We will come in a later part of this lesson. Then came another person, probably the most important person in this chapter, Carolus Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus. He wrote three books, two about plants and one about animals. He wrote Systema Naturae about animals. He wrote Species Plantarum about plants, and he also wrote Philosophia Botanica also about plants. So this is about animals, and these two about plants. Linnaeus also divided the animal kingdom into, or the, I'm sorry, not the animal kingdom, the living world into two parts. One is plant kingdom and the another is animal kingdom. However, later with the advent of microscopy and with the discovery of the various microbes, we saw that the classification scheme of Linnaeus is falling apart because he did not specify any kingdom to accommodate the bacteria, the protozoa, the fungi, the algae, etc. So, this system was also discarded. Now, two people are important in the classification scheme. Number one is the Copeland. Copeland. Copeland, with the advent of microscopy and with the invention of various microscopic techniques and the identification of various microbes, he divided the living world into four kingdoms. The four kingdom classification scheme. What are they? He introduced two other kingdoms known as the four kingdom classification. He not only included the plants and animals, he included kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Plantae, and kingdom Animalia. This is the four kingdom classification of Copeland. Now, another important is the five kingdom classification of Whitaker, R.M. Whitaker. R.M. Whitaker. And along with him, there was another person called Ernst Haeckel. And Ernst Haeckel. These two gave the five kingdom classification. They included these four kingdoms of Copeland and they just added a new kingdom for the mushrooms called kingdom fungi or fungi. So this is the history of classification and history of the science of taxonomy.